Good. Hey, I turned on all my Christmas lights outside today because it's so dreary. I
Ooh,
just
we
felt
don't
like
have
I
our
needed.
outside lights up yet, but we have our Christmas tree up. We got a live tree this year.
Oh, good. Yeah,
We're
we
gonna
haven't done
plant
it
it
in
after.
yet just because we always get a live tree, but I just got it. We got it Sunday? No, Saturday. But then it was raining, and anyway, it's all a thing, right? So, but there was a window. There was a sunny break yesterday, so we got let's get all the outdoor decorations done. So we popped those all up, and now it's dreary today, and it's nice
Sweet.
to have them to be able to turn them on. So yay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so we're going to talk about stress and the holidays and kids and parents and all of that. So,
We sure
yeah.
are.
So I have a question for you. So you've got littles at home.
Mhm.
And so can you tell me about like, how does stress show up in little kids?
Yeah, so got my littles at home. I also work in social emotional learning, and I have a PhD in education where I focused on how to help kids regulate and how to build communities and families and classrooms where kids can cooperate because they're not stressed, right? So when
Okay.
we like think about stress, we like usually we're thinking about anything that makes it hard to cooperate. So like for me, for my kids and my family, things that make my kids really stressed, especially around the holidays, are just like the amount of stuff that is not in the normal routine that I expect of them.
Okay.
And so like a lot of times I forget, right? I forget
Right.
to warn them, and I forget to tell them something new is coming up. And I expect that they're just going to be able to like stay out late at a party, or that it's going to be okay to have a bunch of people come over for brunch, or
Right.
that like a Santa story, we celebrate Christmas, and like a Santa story isn't going to be scary when like when you stop
No.
and think about it, it is kind of scary that like
Some
a
of them
man
are.
that you don't know is going to come down your chimney.
Right.
Um,
Like what?
so
We
I
don't
think
know
it's
the
like
Jimmy.
those
No.
unexpected things, and just like the disruptions in our routine that really shows up for them.
Yeah.
And they do all kinds of stuff, like all the little kids stuff. They have more tantrums, they get tired faster, they act out, they fight more easily, they're less able to like play by themselves, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you travel in the holidays too, right? So that must add another layer.
Yeah, I will say we go to Mexico twice a year, so they are
Yeah.
sort of experiential travelers.
That's good.
Um, So I feel like we do it and we talk a lot about the travel, and we like read a lot of books about airplanes, and we like do a
Okay.
lot of prep. Um and then for one of them more than the other, like the change in family and environment and like the number of people that are around sort of causes her a little bit of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like different for both of them. The one that it gets stressed out a little bit when we first get to Mexico, it takes her a few days to kind of acclimate. When she gets stressed, she whines a lot, but she also just like gets really shut down.
Oh, she might be a little
So it just
introvert.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally.
Um, so it kind of depends on the kid, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and I know like the classroom teachers that I was with today were talking about how there's a huge behavior spike in elementary school students at
Uh,
this time of year.
yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it show up for you in teen land?
Yeah, so 15-year-old at home. And I think that the holidays have an added dimension for teenagers in that it's also typically exam time. So it's usually midterms or, finals if they have a semester long course. So they've got
Mm-hmm.
all these dimensions of the holidays and then exams and studying and doing papers and projects and all those things. For teens, it shows up in basically four different ways. Their feelings, they have anxiety and irritability and all those things. But it could be also like moodiness, although in teenagers, that's sometimes hard to tell. Like, what's the difference between normal moodiness and,
Yeah.
the new world of exams and holiday moodiness. So how that shows up. And then there's behaviors, of course. And, teenagers still cry and they act impulsively and they do all the things you know, that we do and that younger kids do as well. And I think they have a heightened, their thoughts can also weigh in there. They have a heightened, self-critical phase that they go through, and that causes, that also causes anxiety, and it just builds on each other. I think they can have difficulty concentrating. All those things can come up. And we'll talk, I want to talk a little bit in a few minutes about how to cope, but I think sleep weighs in there when they're studying for exams and, staying up later, they're getting less sleep and all that. And then, of course, their physical, they can have physical symptoms too. They can, their muscles are tight. They have stomach aches. They get more colds. They have headaches that they wouldn't normally have. So all those things are signs in teenagers that something isn't quite right in the world of managing their stress.
I think there's somebody that I follow whose work I really appreciate. Um, that like really frames all of those behaviors as stress behaviors, and I just find that so useful to
Yeah,
like frame any. I mean, of course, if you're like legit have a flu or something, that's not a stress behavior or response, but
right.
or it can't be, but it's not always. But
No,
like, I just find it really useful to rethink misbehavior as stress behavior,
totally.
whether you're with a toddler or a teenager. Um, and it shows up differently, right? But like so often, these behaviors that are hard to deal with are stress behaviors, and so when we think about them as stress behaviors, it's so much easier to like sort of be a detective. Like, okay,
Right.
what's causing the stress? Is it midterms? Like, is it I need more time with my parent, whether I'm 2 or 12 or
Oh, right.
22?
Right. Right.
And like, how do we then remedy it? Like, and for me, I don't know if you feel like this with the bigger guys, but for me, oftentimes I find myself thinking, she should be able to do this, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
she should be able to share the toy, or she's old enough to be able to zip up her lunchbox, or she should be able to not have a temper tantrum, like because she doesn't, whatever it is, she should be able to.
Right.
And when I start doing that, I just like have to remind myself, like, okay, maybe she should be able to, from my perspective. But the fact of the matter is, she's showing me with her stress behavior that she can't.
You can't. Well, and I think
Um,
that happens when kids are stressed, no matter what age they are, even though, in a normal situation, they might have better self-regulation skills. But when they're stressed, all that goes out the window. It's like their self-regulation stuff is, pretty much gone. And so that's why they need adults in their lives who care about them. Right. So, yeah. So
yeah.
then what about strategies for coping with all that? Like when they can't zip up their lunch bag.
I
What
mean,
do you do?
I think like there's so many things, and you just said the thing about like self regulation, and I just appreciate that because
Yeah.
I do think it is a regulation thing, and I also think the coping strategy, like we're humans, so we're regulating all the time, and the coping strategy also needs to be situated in regulation, and like
Hmm.
our littles are co-regulating, like we take each other's feelings, like how like somebody walks into a room and they're like, oh, she just lights up the room. And kids are hardwired to take on the feelings of the closest adult, and so to me, when that kind of stress behavior is happening, like the answer is always in the relationship. So I think that there's ways to deepen the relationship. So like with the lunchbox, she can't zip up her lunchbox thing. I need to get closer. And like one of the things I talk about a lot with the parents that I work with and use a lot in my own life is just right help. So like how do I give enough support for
Okay.
her to get through this? But like I need to do it in the relationship. So I need to be within hugging distance. I need to like be really smiling so that I stay
Right.
regulated. I
Right.
need to be calm. I need to look her in the eye. I need to notice what she's doing. And then I might just offer like, like pointing up the zipper or pointing to pull this way. But so much of it, I think, especially at the holidays, is that I have to stop. Like
Yeah.
I have to stop whatever I'm doing,
Right.
and like kneel down and tend to her. And for me, that's the hardest part. Like if I can stop myself and get down with her and like point to her, like less words is better. point to where the zipper needs to go and like encourage her and notice what she's doing, just like the little parts,
Yeah.
then I can usually get her through it and help her do it. But for me, as a parent, the hardest part is getting myself to stop. To
Sure.
stop whatever going on, to stop rushing.
Because you're going through
Like,
your list of the things you need to do in your head. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I think to me, like the coping strategy is like being able to slow down, for the adult to be able to slow down so that
Right.
they can provide, the just right help. And like sometimes, I don't know, for my kids, it's also like another thing that works really well for them is when they like say something kind of snarky, like water, I want water, give me water, or something like that at the dinner table. It's like rude.
Mm,
Okay, they can't say it like that.
right.
I don't like chastise them because it's a stress behavior, right?
Right.
Um, and I usually just like say it the way that I want them to say it, like
Okay.
water, please. And my kids are 2.5 and 4, and for all three of them, that works so well
Yeah, it sounds like
because
it would work really well.
they repeat it,
Right.
and they just give it back to me in like the nice voice.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel better because then I'm like assuming good intent
Yeah.
um on their part, but like my assumption is like they intended to do it right, but they didn't have the capacity to right now, so I'm just
Right.
gonna like give them a little bit of help. But I think that takes something, like
Yeah.
that takes me being regulated mostly. um
We can, right?
right, and like noticing the places where I can build in routines and build in that kind of like fun, sweet, sing-songy, and
Yeah.
build in time where I can notice what they're doing well, so that we are approaching the holidays sort of like on firm ground.
Yeah.
um to me, that's just like the over time, I want them to be able to do that for themselves.
Sure.
I want them to be able to self regulate more often, and I want to be able to notice with them, like, what's the thing that really helps you when you're feeling kind of tricky, or like kind of mad, or kind of sad.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that's how it switches when they get older. It's like, you want to, you show up in the same, you still show up, right? But it's different how you show up. It's really more helping them, encouraging them to validate their feelings and actually even naming them. It's like, oh, I've noticed you've had this kind of behavior lately. What do you think's going on there? And asking some good questions so you can go, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm stressed out. And then if they name it, then it's go, okay, so now what do we do to cope with that? Like, how do we, first as a parent or a caregiver, validate their feelings. And actually, I think for teenagers too, it's good to normalize it, going, this is normal, right? It's normal to feel these things. And so that they don't feel like there's something wrong with them. It's like, no, it's super normal. And so this is how we, learn to self-regulate. So I think that's important. And then really encouraging them in the teen years to self-care as well. It's like, make sure that even though they're studying for exams and they're writing papers and all those things, they still need to go to the gym, like, or whatever, get some exercise, because that really helps, the dopamine and all those chemical reactions that teens need to cope, and getting enough sleep and eating right, all those things. It needs to be like heightened awareness of that for them, I think, for them to feel really good during those stressful times. So those are kind
yeah.
of the strategies with the team, like remembering. And then we've been doing a little bit of CBD lately, and that seems to really help. So that's a really, a new thing that we've been adding. Oh, and I want to talk about holidays too, like, because it's exam time, but it also still is holidays. And I think maintaining those traditions, because, they're old enough now that, the things that they believed in or cherished when they were little have changed. And I think when they're teenagers, though, you can't let that magic go, because they're still children, they're still, and so really coming up with ways to keep that holiday magic in the air, I think, is super important. And keeping the traditions that you normally have in your family help with that.
Yeah, I love this. I just love the nod to magic. Like I think
Yeah.
that so often even with little kids, I mean, there's like some things I think that people accept, like, okay, Santa is magic if you do Christmas.
Yeah,
But I think that even the adults need the magic.
I do.
Like,
I know
and
I
I just,
do.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
super, an, a big disservice actually to our emotional and spiritual well-being when we refuse to let ourselves have a little bit of magic, and that could look like anything.
right.
Like that
Whatever it
could
looks
look
like.
like just like leaving a surprise for somebody and like refusing to say it was you and just like saying, I don't know, it
Oh,
must have been magic. And
must have
you
been a
know,
phase. I don't know.
it's like could be anything, but I think that it's that's really important. And to me, that's like cultivating a kind of wonder about the world. And it's
Yeah,
like tied to the sort of empathy that you were talking about, like empathy for myself. These feelings are totally normal.
yeah,
And like empathy for myself as I like learn to manage them, because it's hard to, they're hard for grown-ups to manage. Of course it's going to be hard for a teenager to manage. Um, and I think, like one of the things I, I talk about with my kids a lot, and you sort of you talked about doing this like sort of more in depth
yeah,
with when kids are older, is like really being able for them to identify the signs of stress. And I think that there's something about um being also able to identify other people's signs of stress. So like, oh gosh, it looks like
right.
he's having a really tricky time. Like what helps you when you feel like that?
Yeah,
So that kids start to be able to imagine that they could be in somebody else's shoes, and like imagine what it might feel like to be somebody who's upset. Like what if we're in the grocery store and we see a child who's like screaming on the floor, like instead of
right,
rolling my eyes and being like, oh
right,
my
right.
god, what about just like saying like, what makes you feel like, have you ever felt like that, and what makes you feel better when you do?
Right. Yeah.
So that there's like a sense of empathy cultivated. And like part of that I think too is like this thing about magic and wonder. And like you don't know if you like see another child who's having a temper tantrum if they need the exact same thing as you or not.
Exact same
So
thing.
like
Yeah.
it's good to, I think, to be playful about those things. And I just think the holidays bring about so many new or different or like only happening during that time ever configurations of people and activities and experiences, and less sleep and like more exams, and
Right.
all different kinds of environmental and interpersonal and social stress that um yeah, I just think like cultivating a sense of empathy and a sense of magic is like so critical
And I
to
think
like our well-being as humans.
yeah, and the thought I just had that's like I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but is just capitalizing on that. There's a spirit of giving in the air that doesn't happen throughout the year. It's indicative of this time. And I think for teens, if you can encourage them to volunteer or to give back or to do some random acts of kindness, all of that stuff helps also relieve stress, because it just once again it helps build up their sense of well-being. And I think that anything you can do to add in dimensions of well-being to help them deal with that stress is important.
Yeah. What I
Yeah.
love too about this conversation is that it's really so in a lot of the work that I do with parents, we always tell parents that it's the same approach whether they're 2 or 17.
Yeah.
And parents always say, "No, it's so different." Like la 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 la. And what I'm and we just sort of hold the line. But what I'm noticing in this conversation is it's really not. This is an excellent example of how it's really not different. It's the same kind of approach. What's
Right.
different is like these little tweaks, right?
Right.
Or these little like perspective shifts. Where we're getting at the same thing, but like maybe we're getting a deeper layer, or like a layer from a different, looking at it from a different angle.
Yeah, because by the time they're teenagers, they've had lots of practice self-regulating. They just forget, right? And
We
so
hope.
we hope, right? Hopefully, right? I hope they've had practice. Yeah, and so yeah, just helping them remember and doing more inquiry and less, sing-songy. Say it like this. It's like more, what would it be like if you did, how would it? Well, not what it would be like if you did, but just what do you think about that? More kind of a thing. Yeah,
Yeah, asking questions.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And setting things up so that you can ask questions together and wonder together.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other tips? Like what are the basics? Are the basic things that you think about when you like, I don't
I
know,
mean, I would
do
say
such a
the
thing.
most significant, I think, coping slash parenting tool to deal with stress,
Mhm.
what comes up for me at any time of year, but especially at this one, I think the most powerful tool is praise.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, I really believe that praise and noticing what a child is doing well, whether that child is really young or a teenager or an adult child of somebody, goes, is the most powerful tool to sort of um, shore them up and nurture them and help them cooperate. So praise, I think the highest form of praise is presence, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're giving me all your attention. I'm important enough to get all of your attention right
Yeah.
now. And so, I think that thinking about praise, like one of the things we know from the research is that the vast majority, like more than 85% of the words that kids hear, both in their homes and at school, are either negatively spoken. So they use words like no, not, or don't. They're constructive criticisms. Those are the biggest two, and then they're also directives. So
Yeah,
like do this, do that, set the table, put your backpack away, kind of thing.
exactly.
And so if you just like think for a second and imagine what it would feel like if most of the things that the people around you were saying to you were negative or constructive or directives, like it's not great. Like that would feel
No.
yucky. Like
Yeah.
people leave work environments all the time because of stuff like that.
Because of stuff like that.
Um, and so how do we like turn that upside down? And like sometimes I'll have parents do, and sometimes I do myself, a day or an afternoon where I don't like I remove all of those from my vocabulary and all I give is praise.
Oh, wow.
Um
Boy, that takes
and
a lot
my
of
kids are
supervision.
so good those days. They're like awesome.
Love that. That's great.
They behave, they like do all this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's because I'm so tuned in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just feel like um we could go on and on about a million parenting tools, but I think for me, the number one thing is when dealing with stress is praise.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I love that as a basic. It's not even just a tip. I think it's a basic strategy to, help your kids grow up to be independent, self-regulated individuals. And
Totally.
yeah, I love that.
What about you?
Well, I think for, teenagers, I was thinking of like as the basic things, making sure they are getting enough sleep. I mean, teenagers
Mm-hmm.
still need 8 to 10 hours, and mostly during exam times. I think the research says that kids are getting about 7, and that's not enough. I mean, in order to get through exam time and the holidays. So just making sure they're getting enough sleep and eating really good foods, but still, making time to take care of themselves too, and to do the family things, and to, celebrate the joy of the season and all those things that come up as well. I think those are super important. But I think I love your idea of praise, because I think especially as we get to the teenage years, we forget about that. I think it's super easy to forget about that because we're, dealing with all the reminders and this, it's the same thing. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And I definitely need to do more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like there's a few things that we know that it has to be like really within 20 seconds of the thing that happened. So like pretty immediate. And
For
like
little,
genuine.
is that true for teenagers? Do you think? You think they can? Because oh,
Well,
really?
that's what the research says, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
So that it might be like within 20 seconds of the report,
Yeah.
within 20 seconds of them telling you, like that's
Telling
what
you,
we know
right.
for
Because a lot of
sure.
times we don't know
By like
what thing it is.
sharing something,
Right.
because you might not be there if if they tell you something that happened at
Totally.
sports or at school or something. Um, it needs to be authentic and genuine. So,
Sure.
that's like the thing about a lot of people, tell them to do praise and they just like will praise anything. And we want to praise things that are like a little bit hard
Right. Yes.
so that we're praising the effort, like not, um, as opposed to like the capacity, right? So we want to praise the effort, like where kids are trying.
Yeah, we should do a whole conversation about praise and how,
Yeah.
how to really do good praise, or what I call wise praise, because just saying good job and all the kind of what is platitudes don't really work. In fact, they can be counterproductive. So I don't
It's
know.
like it's supposed to be at least 100 times a day.
I know that's like a ton, right? And how do you make that
That's so
happen?
much.
I know. And especially when they're older, when they're not around you as much, as your littles are. But yeah, so you got to make up for all the negativity that they've experienced throughout the day when they come home. So that's, yeah, I'd have to
Like
think about
fill them up so they
fill
can
'em up.
go out into the world.
I know, right? Wow.
I know. Yeah, I always just like try to remember that when things start to get like hectic and all the parties and all the gifts and all the travel and all the stuff that like, oh yeah, I also need to be praising my kids. Oh yeah, I need to be
Oh
praising
yeah.
my kids first.
Yeah, so we
You
should
know?
do another one of these in it, soon on the talk about praise,
Yeah.
since it's in front of mine and we
Oh
brought
yeah.
it up. Let's do that.
Yeah.
We can do the
Yeah.
whole
Totally. Let's.
that praise thing, and that'd be great. Yeah, because it still fits with the whole holiday theme and all of that, and it's important.
Totally.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
cool.
Um, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go home
Yeah,
and start
you're in your
dinner.
car.
I know. I thought I was gonna be home and be able to sneak into my home office because I have a sitter with the kids right now. But I didn't think I was gonna make it, and I have to like be really stealth if I go into my home office because if they know I'm home, it's like all over.
Right.
Um, so I just I stopped and got a coffee, and I
Cool.
thought it would be too loud in the cafe.
Oh yeah, that's always too loud. Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun. It was good to chat
It was
with
so
you.
good to talk to you.
Yep. We'll talk
Okay, we'll
soon.
talk soon.
Have a good evening.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.